Nothing ever ends poetically. It ends and we turn it into poetry. All that blood was never once beautiful. It was just red. That's that.
That's a brilliant little bit there, like little poem.
It is.
Where'd you?
It's not me. Jesus Christ, no. I'm not that talented. That
Okay.
is by Kate Rakowski, who is a slam poet. I don't know if she was ever a champion or not, but really good. I came across it in a Reddit thread, and I was like, oh, that's got to be from a poet. And I had a look into it, and very much is from a poet. But
Oh,
yeah, welcome to
fucking
Silly Wales.
hands off to her. Jeez.
Yeah, it's fucking great line.
Yeah.
Oh, I got to move my chair. There we go. Welcome to Silly Wales. It's a mental health podcast. Yay!
Yay.
We discuss topics, well, in and around the topics of mental health. I say this every week, and I still somehow mess up something in that carousel of information. This podcast is for everyone, but that doesn't mean it is for you, and it might not be for you, and that is okay. We're not going to hunt you down. I've just done a gym session and Muay Thai. I can barely move, let alone chase you down for not listening to the show. That being said, maybe I need the extra cardio. Who knows, eh? Who knows?
Always more cardio.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a good point. I don't know. We're in a weird state. We're in a weird state. I think we're approaching that time. I don't know if it's of the year, of the month, where you're kind of trying to settle yourself and you're trying to reevaluate all those resolutions that you made.
Mm.
Some people are now, a lot of people I know are being like, yeah, I'm gonna focus on my resolutions because I've had the first few months to fuck about, but now I'm gonna be locked in. I'm actually gonna get it done. And then there's some people who have just completely abandoned all of their resolutions, and both of those things are totally fine and totally okay. Who are we to judge? Who am I to judge? Who are you to judge? Who's anyone to judge? You know?
Is it? I just kind of thought about that. Does it make sense to have New Year's resolutions at the time of year we do it? As in, we could have New Year's resolutions, but we could have a different date for the new year. And I feel like starting that shit in January is seemingly one of the worst times of the year to do it because it's shit. I mean, the UK just feels shit for many months, and it's like one of the worst times of the year to get anything done like that. I mean, when has anyone ever said, like, January, that's a productive time for me? Do you know what I mean? It doesn't seem like it makes sense. Could, what if it was we're about to spring forward with the verdant solstice or whatever it's called. It's the spring solstice. It's that one. That seems like a time where it makes more sense, right? Like, there's more day in the day. There's more light in the day and shit like that. That feels like that's a better thing, especially for us people with sad and shit like that. Maybe we should start something.
But maybe we should just cancel January, okay? January had some problems. They had a few racist tweets. Clearly just not down with the lingo of today's modern society, and they're now cancelled. We now start from February. You know.
Oh, I don't like February either, to be honest.
Yeah, fuck it. February is a raging homophobe and clearly a racist too. We've cancelled February too. You know.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, like, sorry, we've now been cancelled. We found your old tweets from 2014 when you were edgy and you thought you were being funny, you know. But now it's time. You've been had. Sponsorships are gone. No one's talking to you. No one's responding to your messages. It's time.
If you somehow spun that in like a really historical reference, you know, instead of saying 2014, you said, like, I don't know, when did February come into being as a month? And you were like, oh, you're like back in the AD 300 or whatever it was. You made some bad decisions, and we know that time was really rough. So, and now we're kind of against it. But
you know, through the annals of history,
workshop it. I'm workshop.
Yeah, you'll see like February's tweets alongside Karl Marx's views on various people of different races, and then like, oof, yeah. You have a guy being like, "Hey, but it's part of the time, you know." That's how it was.
I mean, Immanuel Kant was pretty much like, yes, equality for all people, but fuck black people.
Pretty much.
essentially just like, oh yeah, equality for all people, obviously, but black people aren't people. So, those are completely not mutually exclusive ideas. It's like, okay,
Well,
brilliant.
not much has changed either.
But he had so much to say about other things that actually were of note. There's so much of philosophers and scientists of the past is a bunch of stuff that we have generally held on to, and then a bunch of stuff that we've chosen to ignore, just because there's just some bull crap that's come through for a lot of different people. And it's like, okay, well, we don't remember that so much, especially philosophers. Fuck me.
Yeah, like I'm just thinking. So you guys have probably now listened to the last episode we recorded last week, in which my audio sounds terrible, and this week sounds good, but you're gonna not hear this until next week, Monday. So right tomorrow, you're gonna today's the
Uh oh.
25th. Um,
It
on the
really holds
25th,
up.
yeah, it does. So right now, what you guys have already listened to would have been last week's episode, which sounds slightly better than the week before. But this is now probably the start of me sounding good again. We figured it out. We got there. We've totally timed, stamped everything now. So people aren't going to get. I don't know. It's what it is, But hey, what do I want to mention? Yeah, I've been getting more emotionally unregulated at like cyclists and pedestrians recently. I am a very keen cyclist. One of the things I hate is when somebody puts like themselves first or have like a main character syndrome, which you spoke about last week.
Mm-hmm.
I had it today as on my way back home from Muay Thai, and there was this guy who was cycling while on his phone on a very, very busy road. And I normally go, that's pretty dangerous. It's akin to someone driving and holding their mobile phone in their hand, which I've seen quite a few times.
Yeah.
But I feel like this is even about to enter. We go through like a whole junction, and it's like there's a stream of cars behind us, and this cyclist is at the very front of the line, right? So when the light goes green, he's the first guy. Cool. Light goes green. He cycles over. I'm like not super close to him, but I'm within distance. And as he is going across the junction, this motherfucker pulls out his phone and looks at his phone while he's cycling through a junction. He then slows down. So I know here, I am directly behind you. If I pull out, I'm going to get hit by a car. But
Mm-hmm.
now I'm going to end up just about hitting you at this point. He then just about speeds up enough. So I come to a near complete stop. He slows down. And the person who's cycling behind me then has to slow down. And we're all just in the middle of the road effectively, but he's fine. So then I'm just like, I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill him. Like, I became Wayne Brady in that Chappelle Show sketch. I was like, is Alex Cupid going to have to choke a bitch? I'm going to have to get off my bike and I'm going to have, like, it's the brain deadness, Joe. It's a, how do uh, help?
I'm just imagining you going up on the side, grabbing a pole off the street, and then like just jamming it in like Indiana Jones into his front spoke, the spoke to his front wheel, and he just fucking
Pretty much.
explodes.
I just like what hurt is I was thinking, who am I angry at here? I really want to work at channeling my anger, so I'm actually angry at people. Because if something happens, I like if someone does something bad to me, I get angry at myself. I'm like, how did this happen? Why did I let this happen to me? Jesus Christ, it's my fault. I want to be able to be like, oh look, I'm angry at this person. Ah, but
Well, yeah. I mean, like not really thinking about it so much, but now that you've brought it up, I do recognize there's a danger if you're like on a bike with like, Bluetooth earphones in talking to someone. I could see that having its own danger. But getting out your phone and looking at it is like that's the level that you should never reach. Like you should never have your eyes off of what's in front of you, even though it's been shown that like you are very much distracted when you're talking in the car and things like that to an extent. But normally we recognize you're allowed to talk to the driver in a car. That's not a problem. So having someone on your phone that you're listening to is okay. I think if you're on a bike, honestly, it's probably it's way more unsafe for you, but then also other like bike cyclists like you
like
around you.
because I have my phone attached to my bike, so like there's a little
Hmm.
holder, and
Yeah,
I can change
yeah,
songs
they're
if I want
everywhere
to.
now.
Yeah, I could change songs if I want to. But also, my Bluetooth headphones, I can double tap it and it will change song. I can, like, again, within reason and knowing where I'm cycling. Like, on a main road like that, I'm not even looking at my phone. I am getting across the road and I'm making it a good distance down the road. And if I need to call somebody, I always pull over, unless it's like the dead of night and I'm cycling down a long road and, you know, I have the ability to just go, okay, open up my phone, go into contacts, call Joe. I can do that. But if it's like a peak rush hour situation where cars are gonna try and overtake you in the dumbest places ever. Like I had a car try and overtake me on a corner, and then he pretty much nearly veered into onto like the pavement or whatever because it's such a tight turning,
Yeah.
and he just you're not that guy, okay? You're not good. You're not good at anything, okay? You've never succeeded at anything, okay? And you're trying to make a turn onto the corner, and it's just oh come on, man. And I'm always thinking to myself, why I don't get angry at him for trying to turn that corner. I get angry at myself for existing in that moment. Like
There's actually new laws about overtaking bikes, right? I've just realised as well,
you're
right?
just not supposed to ever overtake anyone on the corner, really. You're not
Well,
in
no,
an
on a
F1
corner,
race.
never, never. But like in general, isn't there like certain highway code rules now to kind of like prevent it or
Probably, but people are so stupid. Like I had a guy, like I was cycling really slowly on purpose because the traffic was building up, and I
Mhm.
wasn't going to filter through the traffic because the lights always turn green fairly quickly. So I slow down, knowing full well this happens, and I take a pretty good percent to the left side. This guy is like constantly flashing his lights. I'm like, you want me to speed up to go where? So we hit the same wall of traffic. He's like, you're so going so slow. I'm like, we're not even moving. We're in traffic. Like, I'm like, I'm angry at myself for being in that situation. I'm not angry at him. I'm angry at myself. I'm thinking, would I become a destructive human being if I were to be able to channel my anger in an appropriate way? Because being angry at myself isn't appropriate for myself. It hurts me. It only hurts me. But if I were to go, oh, I'm not angry at myself. I'm angry at you. Like, would I then become a destructive human being by that process? Is my internalized anger and like self-loathing and hatred, is that me being a good human being, or is that me being self-destructive to myself and only myself? Like, do I need to start unleashing and being like, hey, actually, do you know what? I am actually upset at you, and I'm annoyed at you, and I'm angry at you. And maybe I will throw a brick through your fucking car window, okay? But then,
I
you know,
okay. Let me try and see if I can explain how I initially think of that. I imagine, and I'm basing it also off of. I'm trying to think back to my own experiences of like when I get angry or when I don't get angry. Like when I get angry at people, because I do actually get pissed off at people, on occasion. But I'm quite good at like not like making a big scene of it or saying a bunch of shit. And sometimes it's almost you can almost spin it to be like amusing, right? Like in the way that you laugh at people for when they get like irate and shit like that. When you just you can't, like, it's so absurd you can't like not see it for the pathetic thing that it is. And when I really get pissed off at someone, I think more what happens is I'm like, okay, I don't want to, like, I want to be peaceful. I know it doesn't necessarily help the situation for me to be outwardly aggressive or outwardly intentional. I can say something or do something. I can be like, hey, don't do that or whatever. Like I can do something, but I don't want to be like, I don't want to like fucking I don't want to start something. I don't want to obviously increase the tension. I just want to kind of like put it in its place there and then, if anything. But in my head, it's like, okay, what happens is I feel the anger in my head, and it's still towards the person. It's not towards me. But the problem is that I still feel bad, like, because feeling angry doesn't make you feel good, especially if you don't have like something to channel it against immediately. Which is why I can see what you're saying, where like, oh, I'm not channeling the anger at them, so I feel shit, kind of thing. But I think at that point, what has happened to me in those moments is I've been like, okay, I've got to find a way to remove the anger. Like I've got to find a way to just accept that I was right and this person was an idiot, and be able to not pity them, but essentially like see them doing what they're doing and just kind of understand that I'm in that I'm a better person for who I am and what I'm doing, and just kind of like, and at some level remove it that way, like kind of forget. Because the thing about, at least this is like lots of stuff I've read, this is all very, this can be both spiritual and kind of like actual psychology. You can't be angry for no reason, right? You have to be angry because you maintain in your head a reason for anger. You have to like self-justify it. Like whenever I'm angry anyway, I always remember what I'm angry about over and over again. It comes back to me like, yeah, like why the fuck would they do that, or or whatever it might be, and so on. And so it's you have to you have to kind of accept that thought, but then let it go by as the kind of like mindfulness wise, like the thought that it is, just kind of like let it leave and not linger. And then once you do that, you don't have a reason to be angry, and so your tension just kind of dissipates because your parasympathetic nervous system starts coming in again and like relaxing you, I guess. But I don't have that problem you have where it's like, oh, I'm angry at myself for being in the situation I'm in. I don't have that. So I don't know if it's harder for you to do that than it would be for me to do that. Because once they're gone, I'm no longer feeling the anger at myself. I'm feeling the anger at like a phantom of them that I just have to remove the phantom. But when you're there and you're angry at yourself for it, then you're still there. So your anger can still perpetuate a target, a victim, right? You can still use your anger towards something. You are channeling your anger. You're channeling your anger in a direction that's not helpful or useful. But that's what at least feels like. That's my first interpretation of what you're trying to say.
Yeah, I don't know. It feels like there's a disconnect between like, as you touched on, like there's a disconnect between how I'm getting angry, why I'm getting angry, and the target of the anger. And it feels like if they're all aligned, then it's a bad thing, but it's a good thing. Because even if I think about it more, like when I'm actually am angry at myself, like I did this stupid thing, and I'm angry now at myself, it doesn't balance itself out. I'm just even more angry at myself. So
Are
like we
you
go
angry?
through the really
No, no,
good.
no. Please keep going. I thought you'd finished.
No, I was saying like I'm just now double angry at myself. I'm like, I was originally upset and now it's me and I'm upset at myself and now I really want like the negative things that come with it, the self-loathing with it, it becomes more depressive, then it becomes more dark, and then it becomes more like suicidal-esque, and then you're like, oh Jesus. And then like you're angry and then now you're questioning why you're even alive. And like, oh Jesus Christ, how did we get here? You know?
So, do you? I'm gonna like hypothetically imagine that this has happened again, and you're back in that moment with those thoughts, like of that anger, right? Are the thoughts of anger towards like about like that are more to do with you? Is it more? Are you angry about being angry, or are you still angry with the situation? Because if you are angry with the situation, then the only way in which you can be angry about the situation is you either you're angry at them or you're angry at yourself for a reason for no valid reason that you, or at least unless you come up with one in the moment. Maybe you do,
It's
because
always like
you do that all the time.
yeah, it's always like a like with the whole cycling thing, right? Because I'm like, okay, cool, fine. I was angry, and I felt like I should be angry at him, but for some reason I was angry at myself for one, not like fully like destroying him completely, but also angry at myself for being in a situation where my life effectively depended on him. Like if he had slowed down for a few seconds longer, like two cyclists probably would have got hit by a car, and one of them would have been me. So angry that I was in that situation. I was angry that I was I wasn't ridiculously vocal with it either. I was angry that I allowed myself to be very, very vulnerable in that moment. He wasn't the target of any sort of anger there, like, which is what I'm thinking. In a normal sense, it should be I'm angry because he can't cycle for shit, and he needs to know he can't cycle for shit, and he is directly causing harm to me, and he needs to pay. That's how I feel like I should be feeling. But instead I'm more eternal. Why am I an idiot? This is annoying. I'm the worst. Help me. you know
So that's slightly different than what I thought it was originally, which is a kind of a good thing, I think. Um, Being angry at not vocalizing, I think, is a very real thing, though. I think a lot of people, it's almost a regretful anger. right? Like you didn't do something,
Yeah.
like a frustration of that kind. And then it's anger that you were vulnerable, like that you were in a situation where something bad could have happened and you didn't have control over it.
Like, it's something I've gotten better at. Like the notion of being angry at something, actually explaining to someone that you're angry at a situation. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there was a guy in the gym who was like, again, so many guys now in the gym. I mentioned it last week, I think. Everyone has a fucking tripod out and all that stuff, and like,
Yeah.
it was all well and good, I don't fuck with it, but I don't hate it either. I'm sure in the future I'll probably end up filming something in the gym myself. But I'm very, very low key with it. But this guy had like a Video Mic Pro strapped to his chest and all that shit. Like, he was ready to fucking go. And it's all well and good that you're doing your thing. Continue to do your thing. Like, if you're someone who makes any sort of content related to being in the gym, you do what you need to do. But for the love of God, please do not, and I swear to God when I say this, do not make it a point to use the fact that you're filming as a reason that you should get something else in, like, from the world. We don't owe you anything. Like, I'm there doing, shoulder presses, and a guy said, "Hey, can I use that bench because I'm filming?" And I was like, "No, I'm here." He goes, "Yeah, but I'm filming, and this is a better angle." I'm like, and I'm still angry at myself for not flipping out how I should. Like, I was
Mm-hmm.
gonna go full Joey Diaz. Who the fuck are you? You know? But instead I went, look, you're filming, right? But this is a gym. People pay for this. You pay for this. I'm already here. I'm staying here. That's that. And he was like, yeah, but, and his only thing he could actually say was, yeah, but I'm filming. As if that meant that I should be like, yeah, man, you're filming. So I'm gonna go to a different bench and you can come and use my bench. No, of course not. You're a fucking idiot. You're fucking, and guess what? It's okay that you're an idiot. Okay? It's okay. Because I've probably been an idiot too. And I'm gonna probably ask someone a very similarly bone idled, like, stupid question about something unrelated. But like, his reaction to it was like, "Oh, I'm gonna strut off." And so like, I'm thinking, so were you ever gonna shoulder press? Because you walked away completely when those two other benches free for you to do the shoulder press on. And also, let's think about it from a content point of view, right? You wanted to be in the corner where you could put your camera in the corner, right? Well, here's the thing. Why don't you just here's a really, really, like, basic thing. Put the camera somewhere else, you know? like like maybe, but no. So he had a full on hissy fit and he strutted off. And I could hear him talking to other people, being like, "Yeah, he won't move." And like, it felt like no one really cared. And I was like, if and straight away, the thought in my head was, if this guy's gonna come back with an attitude, this might be a problem. Oh my goodness! And then I got upset at myself for not, like, making it a situation where he's quiet. And I was like, maybe I should just give it to him. And this whole conflict within myself, I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ, it's happening again. I'm angry, but at myself when he's a cunt. But yeah,
I mean, this is a great example, though. I feel like what you did do was the best you could have done. I mean, I'm not saying it is literally the best you could have done. In theory, in some like world that we don't know of, there was a thing you could have said that would have like made them not have the best response to it, if you know what I mean. Like, obviously, there's some possible thing you could have said which would have convinced them, but it's like no one is capable of that. I mean, it's one of the most. It's almost like the thing to strive for is to eventually be able to do that most of the time, but that's incredibly difficult. And you didn't cause a huge issue. And honestly, if you did go harder on it, you probably would have caused a bigger issue. So I feel like you did do a good job. Like the way you responded was almost like mega chad level of just like, no, fuck off, basically, but doing it in a way which wasn't like, which wasn't like trying to start anything or create any problems. It was like, this is the situation.
yeah,
And
like, you don't want
diplomatically saying
problems, man.
like, nah. Yeah, exactly. And why
Like,
cause
especially in the
them?
gym.
What's the point?
You know, like this is a place where I'm probably gonna see you again. Like, if I come to
Yeah.
the gym at this time, it's probably gonna come to the gym again at this time, and I'm probably gonna see you again. And like, the last thing we need is for us to have a heated rivalry because, let's say, 'cause I always think about this as well, and this is where the rational thing comes into it. If I fight somebody in the gym, it's never gonna be one and done. We're never gonna scrap and then go, oh, okay, shake hands like stereotypical men think they should. And no, he's gonna come back and want to fight again and again and again and again. So like I say to younger people, a street fight with someone who you actually know never really ends
Right.
because they're always there. Like same with bullies, right? If you're in the school and you're getting bullied by someone and you beat the absolute hell out of them, okay, they now have to have revenge on you. So now it's gonna be they're gonna come for me eventually. Eventually they're gonna come. So it might
Hmm.
be a thing. I've seen it where like kids will be fighting a bully, beat the shit out of the bully, and then the bully comes back for second, gets whooped again, third, whooped again, fourth, whooped again. And it's like, at which point, when is he no longer the bully and he's the victim? And like, you know, but yeah, I've digressed off the track, but my point still stands.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, at the end of the day, like it's on them to also create a situation that works. Like there was something I was told a long time ago that was really helpful to me, which was to understand that communication requires two people, right? And whenever I was in, like, I used to have this thing a lot more. Well, I kind of do now sometimes, but I used to have it so much more. I remember where I used to feel incredibly bad for not having like a really like a like just imagine like a really good relationship with someone, right? And the fact that I didn't have that with someone who I lived with or that I saw regularly or something like that, that the reason for it was my fault. And then every time I would interact with this particular person I'm thinking of, they they wouldn't react in a great way. And then, or not in when I say a great way, I mean they didn't react like super positively. They just reacted like meh. And I was like, and I thought, well, I've done something wrong because I'm not winning them over. Like I'm not doing the thing that's like enough. I'm not doing enough, right? I'm not the charismatic charm that's capable of like making them think differently or do for different things. And when this was early on at uni, and I was talking to the like psychologist or I forget what the particular title would be, but a person who I was speaking to that was the student well-being team, and they were like, well, you can't help the way they react to you. Like you can't expect that it's all on you when a conversation is something that happens between you and the other person. Like if they're not reacting well to you, it doesn't matter what you're able to do. You can't just make that happen, but it's also not your fault. Like straight up, there's and like in theory, yes, I could have maybe said something to make like I could have if I had infinite wisdom and understanding and knowledge. I could have probably said something. I could have said the exact right thing to say to win them over or whatever over like a period of time, and then suddenly they would think I'm the best person in the world. But firstly, that almost strikes upon manipulation if you're capable of doing that. But I guess it's just charisma, really. And then it's also like, well, that's not possible. I'm not capable of doing that. There's lots of the only way you can do these sorts of things is by being as sincere as possible and trying your best. But at the end of the day, you can't change the fact that that person clearly can't understand the idea that you wouldn't move. And it's like, what were you hoping to do? Like, what's the situation in which you think that this? I mean, they were a stranger to you, as far like realistically, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, what's this straight? How am I going to interact with this stranger in a way where I get what I want? I want to be able to be on there. Okay, so how shall I speak with this person? Well, firstly, they could have just waited. They could have asked, "Oh, how many sets you doing? Whatever. Can you tell me when you're off or whatever?" They could have said that. If they were really low on time, I mean, they could have just recorded something separate elsewhere. Like they don't need. I doubt they were having a specific situation where they had to record it chronologically. There's no reason for that. So they could have just done whatever if that was a big issue or anything, assuming that's even an issue that might not be. Also, they could have just been like, hey, they could have just been nicer to you about it. And you might not have felt that they were just, that they were being a dickhead about it. And if they weren't being a dickhead about it, you might have been like, oh yeah, you know what, it's fine. You might still have wanted to be on there, and you might have said, no, it's all right, I just want to finish my set or whatever. Then that could have been a conversation. But clearly they didn't come at you with that. So there was no way you could have reacted in a way which was clearly the best in a bigger picture way, but also in the short term, like the only way in which that situation would have worked out for them is if you had just been like, oh yeah, I'll just give it up completely, even though you did feel annoyed by it and so on. And that's not a good thing either. You can't just be like completely passive about it. It's, you were assertive in the situation, and that's kind of the best you can hope for. Be assertive. Nothing really bad happened. So that's another thing I learned, the whole assertive, aggressive, passive, aggressive thing. It's a whole, there's a bunch of things I've gone to. I mean, we've both gone to like, you've had loads of one-on-ones at this point. I've had like group stuff mostly, as well as like a few one-on-ones at uni. And we're all like picking bits and bobs from like different psychological practices and psychiatry and psychological practices. But I feel like in that situation, I don't feel like there was anything bad. Like at that point, the anger you feel is more a case of how you are interpreting the events afterwards, right? Like how you're internalizing those. But that's something I can't like. I'm also not the best person for this. I obviously can't help you through that so well because I don't know how to explain it beyond just explaining beyond what I'm doing now, where I'm just explaining the situation as a whole.
Beat the shit out of him together.
I mean, it's a method, but I don't think it's a sustainable one. And ultimately, what I mean, you would have just got kicked from the gym, right?
Yeah. Oh god, you're the good destiny. Yeah, probably. That's the thing. Like, it's never for me. It's never worth. A lot of fights are never worth happening, especially from a physical standpoint. And anytime one has been brewing, I'm always de-escalate, 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 de-escalate because again, like it, you never know. The last thing you need is a mortal enemy who wants to see you dead because you humiliated them or whatever. So it's just best to leave it as on peace-friendly terms as possible. So even, like the only time I'm ever really provocative towards people is on a football pitch, and even then, like if I have a certain victim on a football pitch, and then I'm always like at the end, like, yeah, we're just having fun and making sure there's a handshake afterwards. Because like I've had it before where I've had guys be like, at the end of the game, I'm gonna shank you. I'm like, cool, I guess I'm gonna hurt him
Fucking
to the point
hell.
where he can't do that. And like on a football pitch, I do feel a lot braver than I would in real life. I was like, cool. But then the final whistle blows and he's like, yo, bro, it's just bantering it. Yeah, yeah. I'm like, like, and I'm like, this guy was saying he's going to check. I was literally ready to just 2 foot him in his knee so he can't go get his knife. Like, legitimately thought, I was like, I'm going to have to 2 foot him in his knee. I remember telling like the guy who's on my team, like, I'm going to have to 2 foot this guy because he's said he's going to shank me. So I got to make sure he can't walk. And he's like, yeah, it's not that deep, it's never that deep. I'm like, but you threatened to try and kill me. You threatened to kill me. Like, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
Anyway,
that's quite.
How are
It's
you
quite.
doing?
I just want to say that is quite common in sports, right? Like I remember reading an article talking about the amount to which, like in cricket, I don't know. It's just because it was cricket specifically why it came up and it was funny, because I guess you could expect it from people in general, but it's just the fact that like cricket has this like veneer of being really what's the word, like sophisticated and so on, but they're always like whispering like next to like the fucking wicket keeper is like whispering to or shouting at the batsman like
Uh,
I'm gonna fuck your mum and shit like that, stuff like that, basically to just to just rile them and make them feel off, and that's somehow normal and that's kind of okay. It clearly isn't at a certain level, right? Like you probably could just be like, umpire, tell this guy to fuck off or whatever, but there's a level where that's where if the referee doesn't hear it, the umpire doesn't hear it, like what you gonna do? Like the person just
that's
kind of
it.
gets away with it. It just kind of
It's
sucks.
shithousery. It's
Yeah.
shithousery. Like as far as level. Like I'm always like a bigger guy on the football pitch, so I know I'm fairly strong. So
Mm.
like I rarely ever dive in football. I don't need to. But if a guy is like chatting shit to me and I'm playing outfield for whatever godly like demonic reason I'm playing outfield, it's like okay, I'm gonna dive because this guy's saying he's gonna like snap me, right? Cool. Let's let's give him a reason to never do it. I
Mm.
get the ball. I turn him. He doesn't even touch me. Ah! I hit the floor. He gets a yellow card. Life is easy. He now can't do anything else to me because then he's going to get a red card. Like, that is one way to make sure that you can't, like, snap me. And if you do, you're paying a mega price for it. And also, like, I'm probably not going to be next to him for the rest of the game. like, like I've just put him on ice. Effectively, he's not doing much. That's part of the game. It's shithousery. You gotta get into people's heads. You gotta, one up them on these levels. And are there lines to it? Yeah, there are definitely lines to it. Yeah, are there limits and things we shouldn't probably say to people? Yeah, for sure. Like hiccups. What the fuck's happened to my body here? But you've got. Understand your principles, but make
it's
sure at
like
the end of the day you
politics.
win. Yeah, but don't go too far and understand the limits.
But within the limits, there's so much shittery that happens.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like I never really go after people's families or anything like that. I just say I only go after what I see.
Yeah.
Like if there's a striker and he happens to be black and big and tall, I just call him Lukaku because that is another striker that's big and black, strong and tall. And it's like, is it racist? Yeah, but I'm also black and people call me Lukaku. So yeah, like like we go straight for it. Like they'll fucking call me Alex Oxlade Chamberlain or whatever. I'm like, cool. Like we just we go back and forth for your fun, and that's part of it. It's normally like more of a fun thing to get in their heads a little bit, not in a get him angry to try and kill me. Just have a little bit of fun.
you
But yeah.
you can also put that through. I mean, not obviously not everyone's going to understand it, but you can also tonally like make it sound like you are genuinely just like bantering or whatever. Like you're not like you don't actually mean some of the things in a specific way.
Yeah, like whenever I do that stuff, it's never like it never sounds like I'm purposely being a dick to you. Like it always comes across as if I'm joking. Like it never comes across as like I'm trying to get in your head and I'm gonna fuck you.
I
No,
can
it's always
honestly
like,
imagine you saying it. I know what your voice sounds like when you do this shit, and I can just imagine you calling someone Lukaku in that way.
yeah,
I think, yeah.
like it's like, hey, looky here, good to see Big Rom, good to see Lukaku here. You know, wearing the wrong color top, but hey, you're here. It's a thought that counts, right? you know, and
Expecting a lot
and that,
from you today. I know you've done some big things.
yeah, it's a big game. Like there was a, but we faced. I played in a friendly a couple of weeks ago against a team of like mostly fairly young kids who really shouldn't have been in that league. And I've played against these kids before, and I've also coached teams against these kids. Because a lot, like the youngest player there was 16, and the oldest was 20, and it was just a friendly game, and it was just a bit of an outclass. But my team had, I was the youngest player on the pitch at the age of 26 and the oldest player was 39 or whatever. So it's like it was men versus boys. And during the game, I'm coaching the players effectively, the opposition players. I'm like, don't follow me, please don't follow me, don't follow me. I'm literally moving out of position. Don't follow me. Don't follow me. Why are you following me? And little things like that. Just like that is my level of banter here. But
Mm.
also, he shouldn't have followed me because somebody ran beyond me and then we scored from that. Don't follow me. But yeah. Hey, back to my question. How are you?
I'm pretty good. Like recording on Monday, just I finished the work week. I somehow woke up this morning and didn't feel like oh shit, which is great. It's this weekend, like compared to the weekend beforehand, it was much better. Like just everything kind of went by at a decent rate. I didn't. It is incredible, especially when you do 9 hour shifts and things like that on occasion. When the difference between for some reason this day is moving really slowly versus this day is moving at a pace that I'm comfortable with and happy with. Like uh, the difference is astounding, and I can't quite. I mean, we've all experienced this because every kid eventually realizes when I play games, it's all like time just flies by. But then when I'm made to when I'm made to sit down and do nothing for half an hour, it feels like death. You know, it feels like the longest period of time possible. It's so incredible how you can manipulate people's heads that way, or how people's heads are manipulated so much by events and stimuli and all of that. It's incredible, and it's something. It's part of the roller coaster of experience that you just kind of have to be okay sometimes that you're going to have days like that and not. Something that kept coming up this weekend though while I was working, which has made me feel good actually, was I started to realize I'm beginning to have what you would almost call like resilience or stamina, like from a mental perspective, way more than I used to. And I know certain days I'm not going to have it as much, but there was a few times this weekend where I where, like, oh, the pace is going fine, and then randomly half an hour will go by, and I've seen the clock like 3 times in that time, and I'm like, okay, that suddenly time is going by really slowly. What's going on? And or I'm being exhausted by a bunch of work that I'm having to do really quickly and all that stuff. And there was moments where I remembered something that I had mentally thought of before, or that I've been thinking of before, especially while I've been at this job. I've heard it myself think this multiple times. I've heard myself think this. You know what I'm saying? I thought this, and I know, and I can remember it, right? That once you're through it, like once this is over, you will feel fine again. Like once this is done, you feel shit now, but you know that at a certain, that at the end of this week, or at the end of this day, or whatever, you will not remember how you feel now. Like you won't feel the way you're feeling now, and you won't be able to like think about it that way. And when you're in that place, it will not have mattered that you're in this place now. So there was this kind of like, get through it, and then once you're through it, it's all good. And everyone is, I imagine almost everyone has this already as a concept in their heads, or a lot of people do. But for me, because of, I don't know, I'm just going to call it like a stunted development as far as this is concerned. I don't know what it comes from, but I clearly have like issues with this. For me, it felt like a breakthrough almost, where it felt like where I was able to, and maybe this is almost like mindfulness, I don't know, where I was able to kind of recognize that my moment to moment experience is like I could let go of that feeling of suffering or dislike or uncomfortability or whatever that I was feeling, with the knowledge of with a knowledge of something that will come later. But then in the moment being able to be like, oh, okay, well now I feel better knowing that this isn't eternal, that this doesn't end, that this will end, and that it's not forever. That I don't have to react to it so strongly. I don't know if that makes sense, but it feels like there's something that's leveled up, or at least recently there's been a sort of level up in my mind where I can now just deal with a lot more bullshit. And that might just be a case because I haven't worked that much. So maybe it's just a case that like I've now worked an amount to which I'm starting to practice this more, and I'm becoming more used to it. And eventually it will be easier for me to do that in a different job or in a different environment or whatever. I can like transfer this over, and I can say, okay, well, I'm feeling shit now, but I know I won't later. And I think I talked to you about this 2 weeks ago, the one that came out just the other day that I've listened to now. Episode 8, I believe. The thing I said then, where I was talking about how I feel bad in a situation and I avoid problems, I avoid people and things and stuff I need to do, but I know that if I was to go to it, I would feel better having done so. It's almost like I'm trying to merge the two now, to kind of to try and say, okay, you're suffering right now, but you know you won't be suffering this way if you do something. Like it's not the same situation, because one, I'm already doing something, and the other, I'm not doing something. But I'm trying to merge those two to maybe in my head make it a logic that I can follow consistently, like a program, if you will, that I can follow consistently. And I'm almost like Pavlovian, or like in a sort of like Pavlovian or like operant conditioning kind of way. Like I'm trying to make something that will work in the future, so that those downturns are not quite, I can recover from them perhaps, or prevent them from going where as bad as they otherwise could do. That's at least I'm just sort of like hypothesizing, this idea. It occurs to me how much I think about this shit, because that I come up with these weird like sort of understandings of how I should be working or whatever. But but that was actually a big thing for me, and I was really happy about that this weekend because I knew, and I didn't see Kessis this weekend as well. It's been like I think this is 2 weeks now that I haven't seen him. And the fact that I'm not feeling like super down despite that right now is a really good thing. Like I'm understanding how to take that bad and not necessarily make it the worst possible. So I'm hoping, obviously I'm still hoping to see him. I really want to see him and stuff, but it's just one of those things that, it's just one of those things that like to me is a a progression along the track, if you will. So I'm actually pretty good at the moment. I'm not going back for Easter, so I basically don't get Easter this year. But I'm even working Easter Monday as well, just to add to everything else. But
Jesus.
but I'm doing okay. I'm looking for work. I've applied for things. I'm really hoping that something comes through, and it'll be lovely to get something new, because I just want to try something new at the very least, if anything. And I want to have a schedule that doesn't fuck up my weekends. I want my weekends back. Holy shit! Not having weekends just sucks. There's just no other way to put it, because everyone else does, and so you just are completely out of sync with everyone else all the time. So I'm that's my kind of goal, And shit, you know what? I said I was gonna. I don't know if I said this on the podcast. I think I just said to you. Oh no, I think I did say on the podcast as well. I was meant to check that place out, and I didn't. So I'm gonna need to. I'm gonna need to request to see that house that I was thinking about. But yeah, like that as well. All of that. So I'm organizing myself is just difficult, but I'm happy enough with what I've gotten, with what I've gained, I think, from this last few days. So I'm happy with that.
Yeah, man. Like, it sounds like you, because I've always been trying to figure this out. How do adults, like, shout out to someone like Ryan here, who's a listener?
Yay,
How do they
Ryan!
get?
Thank you for the
Yeah,
kind words.
yeah, that too. Like, how do you get yourself motivated for work and keep yourself going? Because I don't see myself ever being able to work a 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. That being said, I've applied for a new job and I've done the interview, which I think went well. I'm hoping that we get the good news. I can share it with you all next week. But how do you like the monotonous schedule of waking up, go to work, finish work, go home. And a lot of people I know who are old now, who are old, like, who are older than me, the schedule is wake up like 7 something, get to work for 8:55 or 8:50. They work until 5. By the time they get home, it's 6:37 ish. They eat something. By that time, it's 9 o'clock. And like, there's not much wiggle room in between. And the next thing you know, you're tired and you want to go to bed, and it's 7 o'clock in the morning again, and that's 5 days a week. I'm like, that's a lot, Like how do you like? I work a different schedule, and this new job will be 5 days a week, but it'll be working from home for 4 of those days, and that doesn't mean I'm gonna slack off. It just means I'm in my own element. So I can work to my own speed, which varies between hyper Usain Bolt on steroids all the way down to you know Arsenal defender Per Mertesacker trying to sprint in a straight line. Really quick, really slow. Um, it's just I would love to know how you do that consistently for weeks, months, years on end without wanting to headbutt an airbag of a car, you know, or I don't know, commit a felony. I don't know.
I don't know the answer, truly.
Yeah.
I like the idea that the more invested you are in the job, the less it feels like a waste of time. Does that make sense? Like, not in the obviously you're getting paid and stuff, and there's a reason for it. But if I had a kid right now and I was earning money to kind of input, if I was trying to get invested in the job so I could earn as much money or do as well there, so that my kid could have as best a life as possible, then I could see myself not being as bothered by the job itself, because the reason for the job is not the job, right? The reason for the job is outside of. And then obviously you still might want to find something better, because there's nothing to say that the job you're in is the best job. I'd be, again, I'd probably still be looking for another job or whatever. But the idea that, I don't just go in, do my work and leave and feel like that's all I'm doing, or that's the limit of the benefit of doing it, just to look after myself and that's it. If that was that being like the only motivation, is obviously not as good. If I really liked, liking the people you work with, that's another investment, because you feel like you want to help them and stuff like that. Or if you just have a better time at work and stuff like that, like it feels more like a social thing as well as being something that you go for to perform a task and so on. So I felt like it's multiple things. and I feel like none of those necessarily are enough, but enough of them together can produce an outcome where you feel, where you at least don't feel like you want to like bash your head against the wall. Um, it's just funny. Like I work more than I did at the beginning of working at this place, in September, but it doesn't feel like that anymore, I guess, because I'm used to it now. So there's an element of getting used to it as well that exists. But I also know that like I wouldn't want to take on another shift every week. That would be if they offered it to me. And I don't really want to get involved in the managerial side of things. Like I don't want to become a shift manager or something like that. Even though I absolutely could at this point. I'd go through training, but I actually could. But I'm so invested in not wanting to work there for much longer that I'm not really particularly interested. And it would be a lot harder work, and it would be more shifts and more time and stuff like that. And I'm not really interested in that right now. So I don't know I don't know why investment comes to me as the most important, one of the biggest ways of doing it. So it's a question of how invested you are in your work in the first place, to an extent. It's a bit like, if this was your job, if what we were doing now was your job, even though it might feel like a job at some level, it wouldn't feel, you probably wouldn't feel like how you're feeling when you go to work now, right? When you're going to do this, because it still feels, there's more passion in it, right? There's more investment naturally within that. So yeah, I mean, it strikes me like I'm struck by the number of people who come into my workplace who are working at like in the business park next to us that are just working really, really, uh, physical jobs and things like that. Like there are people who work on farms around here that come into the shop, and stuff like that. I mean, there's like restaurants near us that people work at that comes to the shop, and they do that. They work at those jobs more days than I work at mine, and more hours than I work at mine. So it's clear that this is a thing that people do all the time. I worked at a warehouse in many years ago, and that was shit. But people kept doing that and been doing that for months before I arrived. And
Yeah.
fuck, man, like fuck you, Amazon
I,
warehouse. Honestly.
oh yeah, like like I could never. I remember when I was like figuring out what I wanted to do like post school, and I went for like an interview style thing, and it was 6 o'clock in the morning was the interview. It was at a Sainsbury's, I think it was. You had to go to I had to go to the DLR to like some random like warehouse bit, and they gave us a tour of the facilities, and everyone was in their suits and all that stuff, and it was freezing cold. Um, it was arguably the most depressing thing I've ever done in my life, and I'm so happy I never did that, because I was like, I'm bored of being like a supply teaching assistant, and that's all I've ever done, and I was like 19 at the time,
Yeah.
and I wasn't going to uni, and I was like, fuck, okay, um, yeah. So I just I think the pay was like £7.50 an hour, or whatever, something really fucking bad. Um,
Oh yeah, back in those days, fucking hell, like all the money was down. We were also
yeah,
younger, so we didn't get paid as much.
yeah, it was like, and I was
Stupid.
like, yeah. So you do these amount of shifts, and remember, hard work is the best work. We're like a family here. I'm like, I'm gonna kill myself, literally gonna kill like this is easier. Suicide is easier than this. And I was like, do you know what? I'm just gonna go to being a teacher assistant, and everything was okay again. It's just like when in doubt, the safety is in the educational system somewhere for you. Um,
You
that's
know what?
my viewpoint in life.
Maybe that's one way of doing it. Get fresh perspective on what job you could be working, and then you're like, yeah, you know what? It's all not that bad actually. I'll go back to where
Pretty much, man. Pretty
I
much.
feel fine.
Like I never thought that I'd be working in like employment, for example, and here we are.
That's yeah.
So like your journeys are wild, and we take them as they come. Really, uh, just like thinking on my way back from Muay Thai about how like there's a beauty to life in a way. And I'm always thinking about like past things that's happened to me. And there's a line from Ted Lasso of like, I'm not upset, or I'm not like angry or whatever about what's happened to me. Instead, it's these things happened for me. And I'm like, wow, that's really lovely. It's a really lovely way to put it. Um, so I think, okay, all these things, they happened for me rather than to me. And you can it is a good way to restructure how you feel about certain things. But on that cycle back, I was like, I've had people like make things up about me. I've had people um like claim that I did this and I did that. And I realized, wait a second, these this person is so like anyone who does this shit, they're so like they feel so undervalued within their own lives that they're trying to diminish the value of somebody else's. And you're like, wow, okay, that kind of makes me feel okay now because I don't feel like I'm worth anything. But that means this person must feel like they're worth even less. Jesus.
Yeah,
And you kind of,
channeling your anger in the wrong, away from you into for no good reason, right?
it's like, cool. I guess it's not all that bad, eh? But yeah, that's that. That's that for me. I just, yeah. Anything else, Joe?
No, I was thinking to myself just then, like, do you think that me and you, in the way that we think about, especially when it comes to things like work, because I realize it's one of the main things I think about is what I'm going to be doing day to day. And that's not a bad thing, but it's clear to me that that's a very important thing to me. Whereas I know for some people it isn't. There's just other things in life they care more about. And I don't think that there's a wrong or right to that. But it's made me wonder, are we both quite work minded in that way? I'm not saying that like either of us are particularly great at work. When I'm not saying we're like workaholics or like very career minded necessarily in the way that you would kind of um, stereotypically think of someone who's career minded. But does it seem to be that we focus on that a lot? Like that's something we mainly think about as like about our future. I know it is. I feel like it is for me. I'm not quite sure if that's the same way for you, but it feels like for
what do
me
you
because I'm thinking about my environment a lot and what I'm around, what's around me consistently. That
what do you
seems to be
mean
the
by that
main
though?
thing. Like
Or what do you
for
mean by
like the idea that like when it comes to things like feeling happy and feeling good about yourself and so on. Because to me, it seems to be that I focus a lot on what am I doing because I gain so much of my worth based upon and I feel good based upon how I very specifically interact with my environment in the case of what I am doing, right? Like what I am actively doing. Even though I might have wonderful people around me, even though I might, have wonderful friends, wonderful family, if I was in a relationship right now with someone, would I care about that as much as I would care about what job I was working? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know the answer to that, like, fully, because I don't have a good example to work off of as far as relationship is concerned, like a romantic one, I mean. But as a result, there's a part of me that wonders if that's kind of where my mind naturally sort of pervades compared to some other people where for some people it's like, well, I just do a job for money and then that's it. Like, there's nothing more to it. That's not where I gain the enjoyment in life, or that's not where my sort of sense of self comes from, or a large part of my sense of self comes from. And so they just kind of do it and, they get through it and then they find other things, whether it be their friends, their family, etc., to get it from. I'm just or hobbies, even stuff like that. I'm just wondering, like, whether this is lining up for you at all, or if that's just kind of what's happening in my head when I think about it.
it depends on the job I'm working because like my goal the type like if I'm working my dream job, I'm not really working a job. Like I kind of like if you take relationships for example, like if I have a job in football, for example, like there'll be times where it's a lot, and you might just need someone who's with you on the journey rather than like uh being a focal part of your whole life. Yeah, of destiny. And then like it could be that you're leaving two very separate lives, but you guys come together at the end of the day or whatever. But like I can't work a job for job's sake.
Hmm.
I'm a very project orientated person, and I need to see the things that I'm working towards have some sort of effect, and positive and negative. Like as a football coach right now, like it's been mostly negative, honestly. I've not been like performing as well as I would want to. I'm like, great, but I can actively see the positives that I put in and the positives that come back out. The negatives I put in, the negatives that come back out. I can actively see it because it translates on a football pitch. But if I'm working a job where, like, say I'm like, I'm stocking shelves and stuff like that, things that you're able to do that I can't do. I see someone pick up like the baked beans that are on the shelf. I'm like, cool, baked bean gone. I have to like, or eventually I'll replace it, but it doesn't feel like I'm part of anything.
Mhm.
And I struggle so badly with like not seeing something like come to fruition, I guess. So the like the idea of having like a meaningless job breaks me in a way. So I need to do something. I need to like when I was doing laboring, with a good friend Michael and his like father-in-law, whatever. Like I was building a house. I was building a house extension, so it felt like I was actively part of a project that was being built. But if I was on like working in Subway, I wouldn't feel like I should never fucking yawn. I wouldn't feel like I'm actively creating anything, if that makes sense. But maybe that is just maybe the guy working at a Subway thinks that he's contributing, he's creating something. So maybe it's like, depending on situation, depending on how you view a job and whatever. Like, but I desperately need to be involved in something if
Yeah,
I'm gonna work and get paid.
I mean, there's definitely an element of this, which is how we interpret and relate to our job. I mean, like I said, my job is important. There are people who rely upon the shop or whatever, but that to me is not that meaningful personally, like as much as it should be. But if I was working in like, I don't know, a soup kitchen, for example, feeding like people who need it in a sort of more in a fact that they actually need this food or whatever, or even if I was working at like a canteen, for example, at a workplace, and we were, and we were making food. And I mean, this barely exists anymore, but this used to exist more in the UK. But and this place was like, oh yeah, we're making food for all of the people who work here, or like, even like a school, right? You can imagine. Then it's like, yeah, you're doing it for all of these people. You see them every day. There's generally this notion that exists. I think that would be more meaningful to me, right? If there is that part of it where it is just how you personally relate. But in the case that you talked about with with my job, like the funniest thing about working in a shop is you realize it changes your relationship to shops, because you begin to recognize that working in a shop and being at a
Joe?
shop. I am here. You just can't hear me.
Joe.
You can't hear me,
That's
mate.
2 weeks in a row now where you've just disappeared.
I'm still talking. Don't worry. Um,
You're talking.
yeah, I'm still talking. What is up with your shit?
Okay, cool. So,
What is
yeah,
up?
I don't
Shit.
know. I don't know, man. It's not. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I was just gonna say with my with I don't know where I was cut off, but either way, with my work, like it literally feels like you're like you're in a sinking ship and you're constantly like trying to take the water out, like constantly. Like that is what the job is, because people come in, remove all the stuff, and you have to constantly like refill and make things all nice and make it seem like nothing is wrong, and just constantly do everything to try and plug it all up. But realistically, you're all going to be sinking down. You're all sinking, and you're eventually going to you're just trying to fix it all. And that's all it is. And that's not, and so there isn't like much there. That doesn't feel like a particularly meaningful experience for me personally. Sometimes that can be fun because people are literally enjoy the feeling of fixing things. So that's why it can be okay, and that's why they don't mind it. For me, it's like I don't like it because I can't fix it forever. Like anything I do is very temporary. Like eventually, I have to go back to I've refilled Big Pop. Now I have to refill it again. It's 2 hours later, and the milk needs to be done again because people fucking drink that shit down. So I have to constantly go back and do it. I have to go on the till because there's a lot of people at the moment, and then I have to come off the till because there aren't so many people, or I have to go back on the till because someone needs to go on their break. Like, there's loads of shit like that where it's constantly just everything is on fire and you're trying to just keep everything going for as best as possible. That's what it feels like most of the time. So obviously that's not always that. For some people that's not going to be great, and for some people that's actually not that big a problem. So there's definitely a personal element to this that I don't know, but yeah, no, I don't know if if my question's good enough to be properly answered. But I just have this feeling that it's clearly something I think about a lot, and it's clearly how I relate to the world around me. The idea of what I'm doing, like the idea of what my job is. So clearly, there's something about that is really important to me. but I haven't found a job where that is satiated in any way, like properly, in order to have an idea of what that then looks like in the future. What am I doing where I feel like, oh, this does feel like a job? Because you said earlier, like, oh, I want to do something where it doesn't feel like a job, basically. And I'm kind of okay with it feeling like a job as long as that job feels good, as long as I feel good about having done it. That's kind of the most important thing. So there might be times where I'm like, this feels like a job, but ultimately it's like the most important thing to me in the world. So in a way, it doesn't really matter that it feels like a job, because I feel like there's something being done which is more necessary than anything else and feels impactful, I suppose. Anyway, that was just my little thought process. Just because we started talking about jobs, and it occurred to me that this isn't something I've like talked to you about specifically, but it came to. I started thinking about it recently when I realized how much this is in my head, and this has always been in my head, basically. So yeah, that's good for me. I'm done.
Before we end, we have listeners from Canada we've already mentioned, but Australia has now joined in. G'day. So I'm so sorry. And Mexico's joined in because why not?
Yeah. We need
Yeah,
to learn
look at
some
that.
languages and just have a whole podcast in a different language for all those people who have to listen to who've learned English on our behalf.
Yeah, like it's surprising how many of like the listeners of the show use things that aren't Spotify. Like I don't use Spotify either. I use Apple Podcasts, but like 53% of our people use Spotify, but the rest use like Alexa enabled devices, which means that somebody's going, well, I'm not gonna say it too loud because it's gonna actually do it. Like Alexa, play Silly Whales, which is quite cool. Like and another small percentage
Radio from Spotify.
you could have just said a different name, by the
Alexa,
way. I don't know why you didn't just
stop.
do that.
I truly thought that she couldn't hear. This is this is the issue right now. They can kill us if they want to. Okay, they're here.
Also,
They're gonna take
you may
over.
have just triggered every person who's listening's device as well by saying it. So
Well, if they're listening to this, in their house and they're relaxing, then I'm sorry. If they listen to this out loud on the train, okay, then good.
oh
I
yeah,
hope
yeah.
that
Just put the episode where we talk about that, just while being on a train out loud. Oh my god, like, truly,
but
truly
yeah.
amazing.
Guys, have good time. Have good time and enjoy stuff. We'll catch you guys in the next one where we will try to find the root cause of all of the world's sins and evils. With that being said, I'm gonna take 2 steps. Nah, no. We're gonna take 2 steps to the rear and get out of here. We're in the wind. See ya.
Slut.